This is Fantasy Football Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks. Use code MMN when you deposit at prizepicks.com to get a match deposit of up to $100. Meaning, if you deposit $100, you will have $200 to play with on prizepicks.com. Check out the fantasy props, the overs and the unders coming up. Momentarily, Pete Overzet is going to have the DraftKings first look and research for you for the week to get started, to get your plans on the go, to go win some of that money. Plus, I do want to let you know that if you go to runthesims.com/Mayo, you'll get a discount on the DFS optimizer, the single game showdown simulator, and you can run everything, including your own custom projections, up to 10,000 times to see the distribution of floor and ceiling and where those medium projections are going to be. I highly recommend it. runthesims.com/Mayo. Enough of me. Let's get to Pete.
All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of First Look here on the Mayo Media Network. I'm Peter Overzet, here to walk you through all the salaries for Week 5. I will admit, as I take a first glance at these, this isn't as fun of a slate as we've had previously. We also have a London game on Saturday, so pulling away some options from the main slate. And as I look at early lines here, I'm only seeing one game with over a 50-point over-under. That's San Francisco, Arizona. There are a lot of games snug up against the 50-point over-under mark, but still not as good as we've had in previous weeks with some of these 54s, 55s, 56. So we're going to have to get creative as usual here, and we are going to walk through the slate. As usual, I will give my usual caveats here. Lots of injury situations, lots of things can change over the course of the week, but this is how we get our framework set. Let's go ahead and start right here at QB. I think on the high end, what's really standing out to me, let me get my tab over to QB here, is Kyler Murray at the top. I think when you look at ceiling projection, he, of course, is going to be up there right at the top. We don't have a Josh Allen on this main slate. We don't have a Patrick Mahomes on this main slate. So we're going to be looking at a couple of these other guys to challenge for top scorer. I think the two guys, though, that are really interesting for ceiling that can easily compete with Kyler Murray would be Dak Prescott. He feels too cheap to me here at 6,900. I think he's going to be extremely popular. The Giants secondary hasn't been anything special. I also think Tom Brady at 7,400, obviously on Sunday night, he didn't have an insane game, but I think back home here versus Miami is going to be a very good spot for Tom Brady. So I can see him accessing a ceiling there. Justin Herbert, I think, is also in the conversation versus Cleveland. We have seen Cleveland really get to the quarterback a decent amount. They sacked Justin Fields like 9 times 2 weeks ago, but I still think this is a good spot for him. If we want to go down to some value options, it is a little harder to find value this week. Do we want to go back to Justin Fields? He once again is down here at 5,200. We'll have to see how the reports go on Andy Dalton and all that stuff. But Justin Fields, I think he is getting better. I know he's burned people these past couple weeks, but he remains to me in the conversation, probably more so for cash games than tournaments, just because we're banking on his rushing to give us a floor. And this offense isn't really providing a ceiling right now. I also see Baker Mayfield down here at 5,500. If we like that game, I think Baker's going to be in play. I know all of the chatter today as I record this on Monday is how bad Baker Mayfield looked against the Vikings on Sunday. I get it, but these often present good buy low opportunities if we think the Browns bounce back. And I'll also mention Trey Lance down here at 5,700. It's hilarious that he's priced up higher than Justin Fields, despite not having received a full start. He did take over for Jimmy Garoppolo in the second half. We'll have to see what Kyle Shanahan says, but man, Trey Lance here at Arizona in one of the higher scoring games of the slate, if not the highest, according to Vegas, is going to be very intriguing. I imagine he'll be very popular if he is announced the starter. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else here in the mid-range that I should mention. No one really standing out to me. I think Derek Carr will probably project decently at 6,100 there. Sam Darnold, coming off of all of his rushing production against Dallas, is vaguely interesting. And then Jalen Hurts, I think, of course, too, just with his rushing upside at 7,000. He had a great game against the Chiefs, and I think he could keep it rolling here against Carolina. Let's head over to the running back position here. We don't expect Christian McCaffrey to be back this week. Obviously, if he does return for some reason, he'll be the top play. But on the top end, we're really looking at Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. Those guys are definitely in a slight tier to their own. The one thing I will say, Dalvin Cook, he only played 50% of the snaps this past week. The team probably should have sat him. I mean, Alexander Mattison looked really good last week. Why rush Dalvin Cook back from that injury if he's still not 100% healthy? They did. I believe he made it out of that game relatively unscathed. So if he's good to go, I mean, we just see what these teams do to Detroit. David Montgomery coming off a big game against him. So he'll be extremely popular if he's healthy and good to go against Detroit. Alvin Kamara has been interesting this year. He's getting a ton of carries. He has more 20-plus carry games through this season than he did in his entire career combined up to this point. The weird thing is he's not being used in the passing game much. So I'll be curious to see what the field does with Alvin Kamara at 8,600. And of course, you have the big dog. He keeps producing. He gets the overtime, padding his stats last week. Now he's up to 9,000 on the road at Jacksonville. He will be a good play, but I'll be curious to see if this price tag gives some people sticker shock on Derrick Henry. If we're going down here in the mid-range, I mean, I've seen everything I need to see from Saquon Barkley now. His role continues to grow. We look at the box score here. It was Washington where he ripped off the big run. And then these past 2 weeks, he's had a really solid role. 16 carries 2 weeks ago, 13 carries last week, also getting it done in the receiving game, 7 targets and 6 targets. So I thought his ownership was very surprising last week in tournaments. And I'm guessing the field will be on him a little bit more, but still at 7,300, he looks like a decent value to me here. I'll also throw in Joe Mixon. I think is a pretty nice price here at 6,200. He is doubtful right now. They're saying he's day to day, so I don't know if this tag needs to be updated, but he's someone to keep an eye on because if he's good to go at 6,200, I think that's a nice price. Eckler in this game here against Cleveland, I think has some merit, although at 7,600, that's getting a little pricey up here. Nick Chubb at 6,700 versus the Chargers, who haven't been great on the ground, I think is pretty nice there. He's had really nice rush totals these past 2 weeks, 22 attempts, 21 attempts. So those Cleveland running backs are always in play. If we're trying to find value, it gets a little difficult. One guy I think that will be on the radar here is Damien Williams. We're expecting David Montgomery to miss a good amount of time. We haven't gotten the results of his MRI yet as of this recording. If he's out, Damien Williams will step in and be the bell cow running back, although he had a thigh bruise as well and is technically questionable right now as we record early in the week. But I imagine Damien Williams is going to be okay. And I think he is going to be a very, very solid start. He has that 3-down skill set that we value for these running backs. The only other guy really in this backfield is rookie Khalil Herbert. So I can't imagine him getting a ton of work. I think Damien Williams is going to be a very popular cash game play, and he's going to project really well at this price tag. So he's definitely a value option there. I think Trey Sermon is in the conversation. He looks solid. Elijah Mitchell was a scratch last week, so Trey Sermon got the majority of the work there. Trey Sermon here at 5,000. Last week, he had 19 rush attempts for 89 yards. You know, a bit of a slow start for Trey Sermon. He was a surprise scratch week 1, kind of getting his sea legs here a bit as the season progresses. But if you look at the box score here, you see his role growing every week. So I think Trey Sermon is going to be an interesting play. Again, we want to target this game, has one of the highest point totals that we expect on the slate. So I do like Trey Sermon in that spot. If we're looking for some other values, as long as Gio Bernard is out, Leonard Fournette is a very good play at 5,200. I mean, he's getting basically bell cow level usage against New England, 20 attempts for 91 yards. He also had 5 targets that he turned into 47 yards on 3 receptions. So that's an insane workload for a back at 5,200. If Gio's back, I think that definitely pours some cold water on it, but Fournette firmly in the mix there. And I think we also have to mention James Robinson. He had a really good game on Thursday Night Football last week, 18 attempts for 78 yards, also got a couple of targets, and of course the 2 touchdowns as well as the team kind of phases out Carlos Hyde. This is extremely bullish for James Robinson. Hyde was a late scratch in that Thursday night game. So I'll be curious to see if they continue to make Carlos Hyde a late scratch or a scratch with maybe some more lead up to it. But I think that's a situation we should also take advantage of. Let's head over to wide receiver, where similar to all these positions, we are missing some of our studs. No Tyreek Hill, no Stephon Diggs this week. I think if we're looking at the top, Devontae Adams is probably in a tier of his own as these elite ceiling guys. He continues to rack up insane target shares, 18 targets 2 weeks ago, 11 targets this week. But we also have some other guys up here who I think can access a big ceiling. Of course, DJ Moore coming off of the big game, Terry McLaurin coming off of a big game. DeAndre Hopkins has been quiet lately, but I think that's more just kind of a product of this offense. I think he is still plenty capable of going off, as Arizona kind of has a revolving carousel of fantasy production right now. Mike Williams has shown an incredible ceiling. I think stacking him up with Herbert is going to be fairly popular this week. But if we look at some of the more value guys, I don't know how this keeps happening, but the Dallas Cowboys guys continually seem underpriced to me relative to their ceiling. Now they get the Giants secondary, CeeDee Lamb at 6,200, Amari Cooper at 6,100. These guys just seem way too cheap to me. And I think they're so cheap that the price tag is going to end up making them chalky, which is unfortunate because I'd rather be able to play some of these Cowboys. But every single week, DraftKings prices them so cheap and they become, rightfully popular. Let's see some of these other guys here in this mid-range. Keenan Allen. It's crazy that we're now at the point where Mike Williams has a higher price tag than Keenan Allen. So I don't mind arbitraging that with Keenan. I think Mike Williams he's been great. Don't get me wrong, but he's running pretty hot on touchdown expectation. And I expect that to kind of even out with Keenan Allen at some point. So I don't mind buying the dip on Keenan Allen at 6,500. Justin Jefferson's been rock solid. He's up here more as a ceiling play. How about Jamar Chase? All Jamar Chase does is score touchdowns here, and he's only 5,800. Just absolutely insane. He didn't get in the end zone this previous week, but leading up to that, still 4 touchdowns on the year. And he's coming off another, 9 target game. So Jamar Chase, I think is underpriced there, and it'll be interesting to see if T Higgins is back this week or not. That could definitely impact things. Do you have the stomach to go back to Odell after he burned everyone this week? He's still looking a little too cheap, I would say, at 6,000 relative to his role. I know he burned us last week, but still 16 targets over these past 2 weeks. That's pretty good at that price tag. And if we're trying to find some salary savings, I feel like a broken record because every week on here, I'm like, are we going to get a decent, cheap price wide receiver? Later in the week, a few have been opening up, but early it's tough. The one guy that really stood out to me is Curtis Samuel didn't get priced up. He was 3,000 last week. I don't know why his price tag didn't go up. He stepped right in, 4 receptions, 4 targets, and Diami Brown, the other wide receiver in there, got banged up as well. So Curtis Samuel will likely be this week's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine for the Titans, who just gets incredibly popular because he's the only cheap wide receiver. So I don't really have any idea why DraftKings kept him at 3,000, but he looks like a good play to me. I think some other guys, if we're trying to get cheap, is Terrace Marshall. Robbie Anderson continues to underwhelm with his targets. He did only have 3 targets here, but we are going to like this game, this shootout potential here with Philadelphia. So I don't mind Terrace Marshall. It's slim pickings, guys. I'm trying to find some plays for you down here in these cheap wide receivers, and there's just not a lot. There is not a lot here. We can scroll. Maybe MVS. No, MVS is on injured reserve. I take that back. So I don't know what to do for you guys here early in the week. Hopefully another injury or some kind of situation will open something up more obvious. But right now, it's looking like Curtis Samuel as one of the only punt wide receiver options. Let's head over now to tight end. We do have Darren Waller and George Kittle on this slate. Darren Waller, pretty expensive at 7,300. He's not going to pop in any points per dollar metrics at that price tag, but obviously he has that elite ceiling. I would say George Kittle and TJ Hawkinson also have a ceiling that can potentially rival Waller's. Not quite where Waller can get because of his insane target volume, but George Kittle, things were encouraging. He was over a 20% target share this past week. He still hasn't had the monster explosion game or the touchdowns that kind of really get us excited, but it's coming. It's coming with this usage. So I want to continue to bet on George Kittle. I continue mentioning this game. It's going to be a game I want to target, and I'll be curious to see where Kittle's ownership comes in. If we're looking more in the mid-range, I like what I saw from the Patriots tight ends. I believe they both scored on Sunday night, if I'm recalling correctly. I know Jonnu Smith definitely did. 5 targets, only 14 yards, but the 5 targets and the touchdown is nice. Hunter Henry as well here had 5 targets and a touchdown too. And now they get the Texans. And Dawson Knox just lit up this Texans team for 2 touchdowns. So I could see both the Patriots tight ends being heavily involved here as well. I think you can take stabs on the Bucks tight ends as well. Now that we likely won't have Gronk, we have Cameron Brate here at 3,300. He's coming off of a 6-target game. And then of course you have OJ Howard, who I believe actually led the Bucks tight end in snaps. No, maybe I have that wrong. Let's see. Yep. Brate saw 5 targets on 45% of snaps, while Howard had just 1 target on 19%. So yeah, so maybe I need to cool my enthusiasm on OJ Howard. It definitely looks like Cameron Brate is the guy there. If we're trying to find some other values, I would say, I don't mind Cole Kmet. His price really is getting cheap. And I don't know if I'm just martingaling this Bears offense, with Fields and Allen Robinson and Cole Kmet, but he is showcasing a decent workload, 4 targets, 3 targets, and 2,700. We're getting down into punt tight end territory. So I don't mind that. And then I would say Evan Ingram at 3,200. His price is still relatively palatable to me, coming off of back-to-back 6-target games here at 3,200. Guessing he'll be a popular bring back in Dallas Cowboys stacks there. So those are some plays at tight end. We can take a peek at defense here as well. The Patriots up here at 4,900 on the road against Houston. That's a pretty crazy price tag. DraftKings has made it extremely hard for us to find some cheap tight ends or defenses that we like. But I'm seeing some down here that we might actually have some decent options. I think Washington football team home versus the Saints, whose offense has been struggling, I think is going to be popular. I think you can play the Jags at home versus Tennessee, especially if they're missing, Julio Jones and AJ Brown again. As we scroll up here, is anything else standing out? I think you could play the Chargers versus Baker with how poor he looked. I think you can play the Cowboys at home versus the Giants. So more so than last week, where it was really stingy at tight end. I like the defensive options so far this week. So as I mentioned, lots to change, lots of news and information to come into play over the course of the week. I also want to mention it is a free week over at Run the Sims. That's where I get all of my simulations for the slates. They run it 10,000 times. It shows you which lineups, which plays are appearing the most frequently. It's a really good thing to refer to against ownership projections. So got to shout out Run the Sims. You can sign up, get a free account, test drive the tools. They also have a standard slate optimizer. We got a rangefinder for player prop tools. So go ahead, test drive it today. If you like it, you can sign up. You can use promo code Pete for 10% off. Thank you to Pat Mayo for having me on the channel. Good luck in week 5, guys.